All right, everybody. We got Ari Herstand here. Welcome. How's it going, my friend?
Great. Things are going well. I got my first vaccine dose, so I'm starting to feel invincible. The amount of anxiety that has diminished since that even that first dose, and I'm literally counting down the days till I get that second dose, has been tremendous. So I'm not quite at the point where I'm going to be making out with everybody just yet.
uh-huh.
I think we're all going to be a little bit more cautious, but it's one day closer to live concerts coming back, and so that I'm grateful for.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, my parents just got their second shot a couple of weeks ago, so I saw them this weekend, and really is nice to be able to unabashedly, hug your parents and
Yes.
feel a little bit more comfortable about it.
Absolutely.
So that's great. Congrats on getting some immunity into your system and feeling a little more mentally capable and
Mhm.
confident as a result. So Ari, I got to say, I've when I saw your name come across the interviews, I was stoked because I've seen your content. So whatever you're doing a good job. You're in my
Thank you.
algorithm as a musician myself. I'm and a music lover myself. I see you. I've seen some of your conversations, your content on Instagram and YouTube and that sort of thing. And I've seen your name pop up at some events that I'm either affiliated with or I'm interested in.
Sure.
And you've done some really cool things. So it sounds like you're really tuned in to the music industry and what's going on, and people are taking notice. Forbes called you the poster child of DIY music, and some other people have taken notice, like Rolling Stone, of some of the stuff you've done.
Mhm.
You've helped work on some real critical legislation for California musicians. You got new music coming out. You got a new podcast. You put on a digital music festival during the time of COVID. But before we talk about all of that, why don't
Yeah.
you take us back to little Ari when he was a kid? Do you have any first moments where you realized music was your thing?
Yeah, I mean, we always had an upright piano, my grandfather's piano in the house. And my mom would play it occasionally, but it wasn't necessarily something that was forced upon me, music that is. I took to it naturally. I was writing instrumental piano songs on the piano before I knew what songwriting was, before I even had any formal training or piano lessons. So I guess I gravitated towards music very very early. Honestly, like I remember these original songs that I wrote on the piano before I can remember forming sentences or words or walking.
Wow.
I don't, it's just like one of my earliest memories is just like that I was playing the piano. And eventually I begged my mom for piano lessons, which it usually goes the other way, where they kind of force the music lessons on the kid. So I feel fortunate that my earliest memories of music was for pleasure, and it was a place that I went to for kind of respite, and I turned to music, and honestly that has never changed. I've always turned to music for kind of my own sanity, my own space, a way where I can find comfort, and that's kind of always been there. And through the years, I got formal training with trumpet. I went to music school for a year as a classical trumpet major and studied jazz trumpet, and it had the whole music theory thing, and was in the choirs and the band class and jazz band, and did musical theater in high school. And I picked up the drums in seventh grade, primarily because my family had moved to a new town. My family had moved to Madison, Wisconsin, and the heart of middle school, start of seventh grade, I had no friends. I was short. I was chubby. It was just like I was being bullied. So I would go home. There was a drum set up in the basement. My cousin like gave us this drum set to hold for a little bit, and so I figured out how to set it up, and I turned on a Dave Matthews Band CD, Under the Table and Dreaming, and just like learned how to play drums to Carter Beauford, and just bang out my New Kid Aggressions. And then like any song I was interested in or CD, I would just kind of put it on and learn it. And that was kind of also turned to music there for comfort. because of school was challenging and the social life was challenging. So yeah, it's been this constant in my life. And throughout high school, I was in various bands, and I picked up guitar, naturally picked up guitar for a girl, because that's I realized that like blasting trumpet at the clarinets was not winning me any friends or girlfriends. So I
Uh-huh.
realized very quickly that guitar was that way. And then to impress someone, and I got over that girl, but the guitar kind of stuck. And was kind of the instrument that then inspired so much of the songwriting that came after that.
Yeah, I forgot which artist said it, but someone once said, anyone who says they weren't thinking about a girl. I guess this would apply to, to a more modern take might be whoever they're attracted to, but whoever picks up a guitar says that they weren't thinking of a girl when they first picked up a guitar is lying. so, so there you go.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like, I mean, you were playing a whole bunch of stuff. So were you
Mhm.
kind of a jack of all trades early on? It sounds like even like high school, middle school, you were playing wind
Yeah.
instruments and guitar and piano.
Yeah, for better or worse, honestly. I think that has been a challenge from the beginning. I mean, my band in high school, uh, we were ska, funk, rock, folk, acoustic, jam. What, you just keep the hyphens going, and
Uh-huh.
as your eyes are going up, you're like, wait, how did literally? Yes, it made no sense to anybody, including ourselves. We would play, Real Big Fish and Mighty Mighty Boss Tones in the same set as Dave Matthews, Billy Joel, and Tracy Chapman. It didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And but those were our influences. And
It all sounds
because
like great stuff to me though,
hey, I agree. But we all, and so I would switch off when we'd play our ska songs. I'd be playing trumpet and doing the skank dance. And then when we would play Dave Matthews, I'd pick up the acoustic guitar and I'd be singing. And then, when we'd play Tracy Chapman, someone else would take acoustic guitar and I'd be playing the congas or something. And it just like I think I got a very diverse influence foundation, musical foundation early on, just by learning all these different kinds of all this different kind of music. And I guess it continued. I kind of gave up the drums. I don't really play drums anymore. That was something I gave up to the drummer in the high school band.
Mhm.
But guitar and piano, I use those as songwriting tools. And then trumpet, I have in my back pocket. I whip it out occasionally once in a while. I don't have the endurance or the chops that I once did. But once in a while, when somebody finds out I play trumpet, they ask me to sit in with them, and I'll sit in with them. Or I do a temple gig occasionally, and so I'll bring out the Harmon mute and play some trumpet there. And so it keeps me up on that occasionally. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I always liked the trumpet. I always thought if I was going to play something, it'd be a wind instrument. It'd be the trumpet or the saxophone. I always felt like those were the cool, sexy kind of band instruments. But you mentioned Mighty Mighty Boss Tones. They actually just signed up to do an interview in a couple weeks. So I'm a fan of them. So
Fun.
I'm stoked to talk to
Totally.
them. Uh,
Yeah.
so you mentioned, early on you were like a short, chubby kid, and you're getting bullied a little bit.
Mhm.
Once you started getting into music, and like you said, it's amazing how therapeutic, especially during those angsty years, music can be
Yeah.
in so many different ways. I mean, when you're older, it still is, but when the hormones are
Mhm.
raging, it can help a lot. But did you get some more confidence once you started playing some of these, started jamming with some of these bands, picking up a guitar? Did you feel
Mhm.
like that kind of helped you come into your own a little bit?
Yeah, music always felt like my safe space. And whether that was band class, jazz band, vocal jazz, choir, musical theater, or the band that I was in high school, this multi hyphenate band that we were in, um, that is always where I found my confidence, and it made sense. There were a lot of things that were confusing, but music was always something that I just got, and not just got, like it was. an area that really just fired me up and excited me always. And I think the first time I got spiritual was not in temple. It was not in a religious environment. It was at a concert, and then that just kind of continued. And these like magical moments and that I was experiencing were at live music events. And that's something that music always touched in me. And so that's when I kind of realized that this was going to be a part of my life, regardless if I chose it as a profession. It was just always going to be there. And that was something that, also brought me comfort, knowing that I always had music. If life took me in a different place, I could always have that as my safe space.
Totally know what you mean. It's that thing where I'm going to be doing this regardless, and so if I can make money doing it, awesome. And actually,
Yeah.
it might have been you who said this in one of the in something in maybe one of your interviews or something. I know it was some discussion about the music business, and I thought it was so great. So maybe it was, and if it was you, then props to you. But it was. The music business is one of the only businesses where people regard ultra success as just making it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it was you,
Yeah.
and it was like, hey, if you're making enough money to make a living and you are doing music, I mean,
Yes.
hey, what's better than that? That is making it, you know.
Absolutely. And yes, it's right. I like to say that it is funny that music is one of the only industries where the sole definition of making it and success by people outside the industry is superstardom. And there's
Right.
no other industry where they look at music, or they look at succeeding and success and making it, sole definition of is superstardom. It's like if you have a coffee shop that is doing solid business, and maybe you might have two or three around town and you're very content and you're happy and your patrons love you. Is that coffee shop not successful because they're not Starbucks? Like that? Of
Right.
course not. Like that's, it's totally, it doesn't make any sense. But in art, I think it's because the average person just has no idea how the business of music works. And so the only thing they know is what they see on the Grammys or the Super Bowl or American Idol or The Voice. And like, oh, that's how music works. And I'm not really going
uh,
to think about anything else because that's too hard for me. And I don't really want to learn this industry. So unless you're a superstar, I guess you're successful. And if you're not, and so I think we're in this like really wonderful Renaissance era of the industry where it's not just starving artist or superstardom. And that's another misnomer. And I think that where a lot of people outside the industry come from is traditionally, yes, it was you're the starving artist, then you get swooped up by a record label and then you become a superstar, or you fall into obscurity and then you're back to either quitting music or starving artist. But we have this burgeoning middle class musician that is bigger than ever in the history of music. And there is actually a way to make a really good living as a musician and be successful without actually reaching those stratospheric heights or starving. And it's not black or white anymore, which is, I think, very inspiring and exciting in the time that we're in.
Totally. And this is something that's right up your alley. I think because of the rise of how accessible it is to do it yourself, as far as a musician goes, with the internet, the digital platforms,
Mm-hmm.
artists have learned how to do most of the things that used to be exclusive to labels. So the stereotype of you're either a star or you're a failure may have been more true, may have been never true, but may have been more true in the past because the labels controlled all these levers and gateways and they had their secrets. But most of those secrets are out now, and as you preach and teach, a lot of those things we can do ourselves, if not all of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that said, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you went from playing music in high school to becoming a more developed musician and then getting into the realm of the music business?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, so that high school band that I was in, the multi hyphenate, I was always kind of the driving force. I guess at the time I didn't consider it business, but just like the business driving force behind it. We didn't have a business, but when we booked a show, I was kind of the one like, oh, we should put posters up around the high school and like tell people about it.
Mhm.
um, but when I got to college, I went to the University of Minnesota for 1 year to be a high school band director someday. That's what I thought. I was studying music education, classical trumpet. I thought that's what I was going to do, in part because there were really no other professional opportunities or career opportunities presented to me that were acceptable in high school. I mean, this was something that my school guidance counselor and everyone I knew told me you have to go to college, period. And if you want to pursue music, there are literally three career paths you can pursue that are acceptable. One, a music teacher. Two, a classical musician, or three, a music therapist. And those are literally the only three options that are allowed.
It's funny, music therapist is in there, as if that's
Well, I think that's because a lot of universities offered that major.
right.
And so, which is wonderful and beautiful. But like at the time, we're talking 2003 when I graduated high school, that those are the only quote unquote legitimate career pursuits that were available and offered to me by the authorities. My guidance counselor, my parents, and just people we knew. So I'm like, all right, well, I guess if those are my only three options, I want to pursue music, I'll pursue being a band director, I guess. And so that first year in college, my world completely opened up. I was in Minneapolis. I started seeing a lot of live music around town. I booked my first Coffeehouse show as a solo artist, a singer songwriter. I'd never played solo shows before, just with me and my acoustic guitar, or me and the piano and singing. And that first Coffeehouse show changed something in me. I mean, that was something where I I realized that this was the most meaningful thing that was a part of my life, and where I came alive, and that feeling that I had on stage, even in front of just like the 25, 30 people in that coffee shop, was something that was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. And I wanted to continue that. And it made a lot of sense to me. And because I was writing a lot of songs that first year of college, and just like I'd be sitting in the practice room where I was supposed to practice my trumpet etudes, and I was writing songs on the piano in there instead. And I was just like, well, I should follow this. This is clearly something that's yanking me in that direction. So, you know, I I told my parents that first year of college that I was dropping out of school to become a musician, and they were not cool with that, and they were terrified, and they started crying, and they're like, well, that's not, that's like every parent's worst nightmare. And so I ended up, we found a contemporary music industry school in the Twin Cities, and I transferred there, and studied music business and songwriting. It was just a 2-year program. And so I was in and out very quickly, 3 consecutive semesters. But there, they taught me about the old music business. This was now, 2004, 2005. And I was learning great history. And, of course, we read Donald Passman's book, All You Need, about the music business, whereas like, it's a great history, but like, it was written 30 years ago. And it's like, things have changed a little bit.
Yeah.
But like, that's news to anyone who's teaching it, unfortunately. And anyone who's kind of like reading those books. It's just like, so I didn't know anything about anything, but I was in school, and they like, we had a whole class on negotiating, how to like negotiate a record contract. And they're like, yeah, if you want to succeed as a musician, you need to get signed, you need to get a record deal, you need to get a manager, you need a booking agent, like the traditional team that we all learn about. So when I finished school, I'm like, all right, where's my record deal? I'm ready for this. Like nobody like told you how to get a record deal. They're just like, you just need one. And you can't start your music career unless you have a record deal. So I'm like, well, man, I wish they would have filled in those blanks for me. And like,
you think that
like,
the music school would cover that.
Seriously, right?
Yeah.
So no, so they're just like, no, you need a record deal. And so like, all right, well, I guess I have 2 options. I can continue to sit around and just like wait for this magical record deal to appear in my lap because nobody is telling me how you get that. Or I can do what I love, which is performing and playing shows and figuring it out. So that's what I ended up doing, was booking shows and learning literally everything the hard way. I book a show, nobody shows up. I think, well, why didn't anybody come? It's like, oh, I guess I didn't tell anyone about it. I didn't promote it. I didn't, and it's like, okay, first hard lesson learned.
Yeah.
If I want people to come to the show, I have to tell people about it. That's like a very basic core of, performing 101, which again was not taught to me, but I just kind of had to learn the hard way. And then everything else, and it just kind of went from there. And I was so, I grew without a manager, without a label, without a booking agent, to selling out venues in the Midwest in a 5-state region, to, charting in the top 10 on iTunes, to getting songs placed on TV shows and movies and commercials, and all like figuring out literally thinking, oh, I want that, how do I do that? So it's like, oh, a lot of songs on One Tree Hill are similar to the kind of music I make. I wonder if I could get my song in that. And then like going down that rabbit hole of like, how do you do it? So I guess there's always been this curiosity and this drive where I don't like waiting for things to happen to me or for me. I just want to make them happen. And so, that's why I don't believe in lucky breaks. I never had a lucky break. Like literally every quote unquote break I had, I made happen. One of my most favorite moments of my music career was opening for one of my idols, Ben Folds. And
Nice.
The way that happened, and he's like, it's huge musical hero of mine. And like, it happened because I had heard that his opener for the tour, Ben Lee, had to dip out of one of the dates. And so everyone and every booking agent in that region, every artist was submitting. And every one of my friends' bands I knew was submitting to open this huge date. It was a 3,000 cap room. And I'm just like, well, if I just submit like everybody else, I'm not going to get it. So I went down this rabbit hole of just like, all right, well, who's his manager? So I started looking up and reading articles. And I'm like, oh, this guy seems to be his manager. I read an article, an interview with Ben Folds' manager. So I emailed him. I'm like, hey, I see that Ben's in need of an opener, blah, blah, blah. I submitted, but I wanted to send it to you directly. And then he was like, oh, I don't actually manage Ben anymore, but here I'm CCing his current manager, and here she is. And hey, Cynthia, you should take a look at Ari here. And so she did. And then we started chatting, and she's like, yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, your music sounds good. Sure. Open it.
Awesome.
And it's like,
awesome.
But it's like those kind of little things. And I always tell people things don't just magically happen. And fortunately / unfortunately, and it's exciting, but also unbelievably daunting in this new era we're in, there are no rules, and there's no clear pathway forward. So that's why it's so important to identify what you want. It's like, I talk about goals a lot. It's like, what are your goals? And specifically, like my goal was, I want to open for Ben Folds at this show. And so it's like, okay, how do you do that? And then you just kind of reverse engineer that goal. Or like, I want to get my song on One Tree Hill. It's like, okay, how do you do that? So I reverse engineered it and then made that happen. And so, a lot, that's the thing, is like, I learned kind of how to do all this the hard way of just figuring it out. But I guess I also realized, like, I'm very, very fortunate that I have a mind that works that way, that I can flip from right brain to left brain and flip on the business and flip on the art and flip them off and back and forth, because I realized like not every artist has that. And when I do have my artist brain on, the business is unbelievably foggy. And but similarly, when I have my business brain on, it's very hard to create authentic art that I'm proud of. And so it's also been part of my training, where I learn how to carve out the proper time and space and energy, and have that emotional capacity to handle the tasks that I'm looking to handle at that time.
Yeah, it's so true. The clearer your goals, the clearer the obstacles, and then the clearer the blueprint to overcome those obstacles becomes. And like you were talking about, you need to fail a certain amount of times to learn those lessons. And so that's the thing about real world experience. Because school's great and can be great. And most of the time, I think school is what you put into it. But it has to be the right area for you. But that's why jobs, usually value, job experience more than a degree. They just want to know that you can actually do it. And a lot of this theoretical stuff that you learn, or historical stuff, like you mentioned, is great, but isn't relevant. Tell me what I feel like maybe growing up, I always imagined like these record guys as like these old guys, like these old powerful guys who wield power. But I don't know if it's just the point in time we are in the music industry. But now when I'm talking to like someone who's, someone who may embody that old picture of what I thought the powerful record executive might look like, I usually think to myself, does this guy even know what's going on right now? And usually I think I'm looking to younger people in the music industry as far as wisdom. And because like you said, there's no rules, and the rules are changing. Any rules that do exist are changing and evolving so quickly that someone who, I feel like sometimes you look at those guys and you're like, I don't know if you know how to, I believe that you might have done it in the past, but I don't know if you know how to do it now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's change is always hard for anyone. And so when you have someone who has found success in their way of doing it, it's very challenging for them to shift that perspective and be malleable and innovate, and just adjust with the times. And so, to a lot of the labels' credit, they are hiring some young guns to come in and help them, stay up with the times. And this is, I think, these are lessons that they've learned from their missteps of the early aughts, and especially in like the mid 2000s and the YouTube era and all this stuff. They kept missing, they kept slipping. And so and they've always been like 3 to 5 years behind the trends, and the steps. And we're starting to see a shift, a major shift right now, with the industry at large. I just had Ricky Montgomery on my podcast, on the New Music Business podcast. And what's interesting about his story is he's a indie rock singer-songwriter, been doing it indie for many years. He's got his own band. He had a couple songs blow up on TikTok last year. And, naturally, he was offered a pretty nice record deal, as like every artist who has a song blow up on TikTok in 2020 was. That's like the thing. But he was really smart about it, because he'd been doing it indie for a while, and these couple songs came out like years prior. It's just like, it's a weird story, and I encourage everyone to kind of listen to that interview, because it's very enlightening. But he told me that there was a bidding war going on, and everything, and that he ended up going with Warner Records. I'm just like, well, why would you do that? Why did you give up your ownership? Like, you're making good money, you're making millions of streams on your own. Da 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 da. He's like, well, because I didn't have to give up ownership. I struck a licensing deal with them.
Nice.
And I'm getting a majority of the revenue share. And I'm like, and that opened my mind. I'd never heard that, other than Beyonce, Taylor Swift, Ray Charles, Janet Jackson. Like, that's not something that artists typically were doing, is being, especially a young artist like him, especially someone that does not have a superstar track record. He's not a superstar. And I'm like, wow, like the labels, some of them are realizing that the old way of doing business is not going to work anymore. I just listened to Troy Carter. He gave an interview where he said, in the future, record labels are not going to own masters, full stop. And so we're seeing this transition, because the independent musician has taken over revenue share. I mean, we are growing, and it is this movement. I mean, in 2020, independent musicians made over $2 billion in recorded revenue. That's streaming revenue. Whereas, like, it's the misnomer. It's like streaming doesn't pay. It's like, it actually does pay, and it pays a lot of money. And the market share of recorded music, not even talking live, but the market share is, you see that pie shifting from, it all used to be the major labels, like with 95%, and now it's dramatically shifting, where the indie labels, the DIY artists, That's what the independent distributors, they're grabbing such a big market share, such a big part of that pie, that the majors are realizing, wow, we really have to dramatically shift our business model if we want to survive and thrive, and we want to have any chance of signing any artist. Because like Ricky was so interesting, he told me, he's like, yeah, we were in this bidding war, and I took this this deal offer of this like licensing and then major revenue share. He said I think over 60% or something that he was getting, which is like completely unheard of for a major record deal. And he's like, we took it to one of the other labels, and they're like, they said, they laughed at me. They said, we don't offer this deal to anyone but Beyonce. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. That's how the industry used to work. It used to be like, they own your masters in perpetuity. They keep 86% of all the money that comes in after the event. And like, so we are seeing this evolution and the shift in the industry, and it's inspiring, because that means that the power is returning to the artist's hands, and that the artists don't have to give up their entire careers and livelihoods and lives and their art, their ownership, their IP, to the labels anymore. And you can like now look at team members and partners instead of these overlords that are dictating and barking orders at you that you have to listen to because they literally own you.
Sure. They're more of a couple things you touched on there. I remember listening or reading an article about Macklemore, and he was like, I didn't really want to sign with a label, but I wanted to hire a label, like thinking
Yes.
of it as you are hiring them to do something for you. I'm, just like you hire a marketing company, you hire a label to do this. It's like it's just an arm, an extension of what you're already doing. And I think that's fair, because in the past, where you might have, an A&R agent may have went out and been like, hey, I like this guy, this woman has potential, I'm going to sign them, and then we are going to build them up, and I know they're going to be great. Labels now, they want you to do the work. They just want to jump on the train that's already going. So if the artists have already built that momentum for themselves, then it's only fair that they should, be signing deals like the one you just mentioned, because hey, it's like, I'm already, if you're at TikTok viral status on streams, you're collecting a great amount of revenue each month anyways. So it's like, if you want to jump on this train with me, label, great. Otherwise, I'm doing this myself. That's why you're coming to me.
Right. And there's so many services and companies out there that assist in all of the I guess tasks and jobs that labels traditionally handled, like distribution. The number one distributor in the world is DistroKid, is an independent distributor, where they allow artists to keep 100% of their royalties. Now, DistroKid and all the other DIY distributors, they don't offer many services outside of just getting your song from A to B, from your hard drive to Spotify and Apple Music. But we're seeing a lot of hybrid companies pop up where they offer label services. That's where you see like AWOL and STEM and The Orchard and Believe, and Human Resources and Extreme, and on and on and on. These are now the hybrid companies, where they do have a playlist pitching department. They have a sync licensing department. They have a radio department. A lot of them do. And they also aren't owning anything. They don't own it's a licensing deal. They don't own your masters, and they actually allow you to keep anywhere from 80 to 90% of all the money that comes in. So it's like the majors are looking at that and they're like, wow, like we have to compete with that, and the artists don't actually need us anymore. So what do we really offer other than just like a fat check up front? And that being said, there's other capitalization opportunities these days, like crowdfunding. We have Patreon, we have Kickstarter, we have NFTs now. There's everything. There are ways that fans can invest in the artist, fans can support the artist directly, but also there's TuneCore has been offering advances based on their previous sales, because like algorithms can determine, oh, You made $50,000 over the last 2 years in your streaming revenue. We see that right in our dashboard here. So if you promise to stick with us for the next 2 years, we'll write you a $50,000 check today, and we're not going to own anything because we think we're going to make this money back. And it's just like you pay us a percentage of your royalties until you pay us back. And that's all we really want. And that's happening now left and right. We're seeing companies pop up left and right that are doing that. I had the founder of the Music Fund on my podcast as well, and he spoke about that, how they're doing that. That's their entire business model, is taking a look at your streaming history, seeing how much money you make, and offering you a deal. It's based on algorithms. This company was founded by Silicon Valley data analysts. And they're like, oh, we can just look at the data and be like, oh yeah, we'll make this money back, no problem. That's PayPal is in the capitalization game too. They're like, oh, we can see the sales that you've done in the last 5 years, so we'll offer you a similar kind of thing. No ownership, no, we don't have to give up equity. So the whole industry based on technology is evolving and shifting, where major labels, in the traditional sense of their deals that they had before, are not only becoming obsolete, they're just not smart business choices for the musicians. Now, that all being said, I fully respect and understand it's a lot of work to manage all of this on your own. And like you read the Forbes quote earlier where they called me the poster child of DIY music, and I'm very humbled and flattered by that. But like, it's DIY as a misnomer. Like, I've never done everything myself. No one does everything themselves. Do it yourself is a misnomer. Like, you need partners and team members, and knowing who to bring on at the right time. Like you said, Macklemore wanted to hire the label as a team member. That makes a lot of sense. And so you might not necessarily need the traditional team like Passman writes about in his book, because that's completely outdated. It's not just like, oh, you need a manager, a booking agent, a label, and a publisher, and you're set. It's like, well, maybe you want a sync licensing agent instead. Maybe you want an admin publishing company that doesn't own your stuff, but collects all 100% of your publishing royalties from around the world. Maybe you want a video editor and graphic design artist and a social media expert to come on your team. Maybe you need a marketing expert to run your digital ads, your Facebook and Instagram ads. Maybe you want a publicist to come on and help you communicate the story and help you with branding and all. So we're looking at the non-traditional team that an artist can surround themselves with. And some of them will work on commissions. Some of them you have to pay them and hire them. So it is an exciting time, but kind of like I mentioned before, it can be daunting when there are so many different avenues to pursue. And yes, you can theoretically do it without a label and without a team, but also we're artists. Like, you got to have time to create and make art.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. Ari, just the past 15 minutes, I love your wealth of knowledge, and it just pours out of you. And I feel like I could talk to you for hours, but I don't want to shortchange you on some of the things that you are doing. So you mentioned your new business podcast. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, and then let's talk about some of the other things, the Uncalled Music Festival and the Independent Music Professionals United group. But tell us about the podcast first.
Yeah. So, I launched my blog, Ari's Take, in 2012, and it was music business advice for musicians. And honestly, it was literally just because I was getting so many questions from musicians on how I was doing all the things I was doing without the traditional team around me. And word spread, if you have questions about the business, go ask Ari. And my inbox was flooded. I couldn't keep up with the requests. And so I just put up a blog, and everything I learned, I put up on the blog for free. This was not a business idea for me or venture. It was literally like, I want to support and help my fellow musicians and the music community at large. And I don't believe in competition in the music industry. I believe a rising tide lifts all ships. I want to share the information that I had. So because literally no one else was doing this, and all the blogs, the advice columns out there were written by companies looking to gain customers, indie musicians took to Ari's Take. And so Ari's Take grew, and it turned into writing gigs. And people approached me asking me to write for them, like American Songwriter and like Music Connection and Digital Music News and all these other outlets. They asked me to write for them. So then I could approach anyone in the industry and say, hey, I'm writing a story for American Songwriter. I'm writing a story for Music Connection. Like, hey, you want, and then they're like, oh yeah, of course I'll sit down with you. I love American Songwriter. And it's not like, oh, here's some dude with goofy hair and he's got a blog and he's like a musician or whatever. Like,
Uh-huh.
no, I don't care about, I don't know who you are, because
Uh-huh.
like Ari's Take was known in like the indie music community, but the industry at large, they weren't paying attention to that. They were paying attention to like which CEO from Columbia went to Capitol Records and like how this company got acquired by this company. And like, here we are, these millions of musicians in the weeds trying to figure it out. So I started sitting down with all these movers and shakers and everyone in the industry, top to bottom. And I was having these really insightful conversations. And so I had interviewed probably hundreds of people for the blog, for the articles, and then of course for the book, for my book and how to make it in the new music business. And a lot of those interviews and the knowledge that I gained from those got put into those articles and books. I'm like, these conversations, these are so valuable. What these people, the knowledge that they're dropping, like people should just hear from the horse's mouth. So I'm like, that's why we should launch a podcast, because I'm having these conversations anyways. We might as well just turn on our mics and hit record. So that's where the podcast came from.
Yeah, I mean, just from personal experience and just, like it's you're sitting on the other side right now. You're articulating some of these things in a way that I couldn't, and at a rate that I couldn't. So that's what's so great about podcasts, and it's kind of, going back to you talking about, assembling the kind of team that you need. It's great. You can curate, the type of team you need now. Maybe you're already a really stylish person, and you're a great photographer. So social media is already your natural strong point, but you need help in maybe Facebook marketing, maybe getting it out there or something like that. But that's what's great about podcasts too. You can scroll through, the new music business podcast, and this is what I need today. This is what I need on my drive. This is what I need to learn more about. And like you were saying, we all have these blind spots or these things that we need to sharpen up. We learn from our mistakes and we know what we need to dive into. So that's awesome. And I'm so we'll definitely be checking that out. Tell us a little bit about the Uncanceled Music Festival, which Rolling Stone called the most recent and one of the larger online music events that have popped up since COVID.
Yeah. So right when live music shut down, we're talking, I was literally sitting on the couch watching the mayor of Los Angeles say that as of tonight, all music venues, restaurants, bars are shutting down indefinitely. I sprung into action, and we're like, of course, we were all rattled. We're like, whoa, all tours were canceled, but our mostly the local music venues, and we're like, well, how are they going to survive? And also, how are all these artists who make their living touring and playing shows going to survive? So, a couple friends and I, my friends Andrew Lieb and Ashley Maeda, Andrew's an artist manager at Red Light. Ashley's an artist, and she works at a label and a publishing company. And we kind of conceived this idea of putting together a live streaming music festival. And so that was not just for the artists, but also for the music venues, and also just the music community at large. So we partnered with Music Cares, which is the Recording Academy's charity arm that support musicians in need. And then we got music venues from all over the world to host virtual stages. So like the Hotel Cafe in LA, Rockwood Music Hall in New York, and other venues all over the world. And then we started, they were curating their own daily lineups, and we ran this festival for just about 2 weeks, every single day for I believe it was like 10 hours a day or so, 12 hours a day, because it was time zone stuff. And within that week and a half, 2 weeks, we raised over $100,000 for independent venues and musicians and Music Cares. This was not a money-making venture for us. We made $0, but that wasn't the point. Like, we worked we worked like 18 hours a day every day for 2 weeks on this thing. Well, actually longer than that, because planning it. But it was something that, we just wanted to help the music community and support them. And we were planning to we didn't think the pandemic at that point, nobody thought the pandemic was going to last as long as it. We didn't think that the venues were going to shut down, for a year. So this was initially something that we thought we could do in the interim until venues came back and live music came back. But it was a really great learning situation, and it gave an influx of cash to a lot of venues and artists that needed it in that moment until before all the legislation got worked out, before the stimulus checks started coming to people's bank accounts, before people figured out how to live stream on their own. Because to be honest, at that time there were no live streaming platforms that offered ticketing and tipping other than the one that we used to stage it at the time. And now there's tons that have popped up. Now it's a whole industry, obviously, because that's just what needed to happen in the age of COVID. So yeah, but that was a proud moment.
Well, that is awesome. I think that speaks to your adaptability. Just, everything you've talked about today, speaks to your adaptability, but that is your adaptability and how quickly you are able to think of these things and put them together. So bravo to you for that. And wow, $100,000, that's nothing to sneeze at. I also want to thank you for your help with the Independent Music Professionals United and the work that you guys did with AB5, because that, as a musician in Los Angeles, when I heard about that law and that it was going to affect musicians and music gigs, it just didn't seem to make sense to me or anybody in the music industry. So that may have been when I first maybe really started seeing you, and maybe that, but maybe it was before then. But I do remember then seeing that you were working to make that law make more sense for musicians. So thank you for your work for that. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, why don't you go maybe quickly into what that law did and what you did to tweak it.
Sure. So AB5 was passed in the summer of, it was signed by the governor of California in the summer of 2019. It changed the classification from being able to classify someone, employment classification, from an independent contractor to an employee. So whereas normally you could contract somebody for a gig, meaning, give them $100 for a gig. Like if I want to hire a drummer for $100 to play my 30-minute set over at the hotel cafe, normally you just write them a check, pay them in cash right there, and then maybe give them a 1099 at the end of the year if you paid them over $600. This law said that you couldn't do that anymore, that you'd actually have to start a payroll company, and you'd have to put that drummer on payroll, and every other musician that you hire that year, even if it's one gig, you have to put them on payroll. So if you hire 50 people this year, you now have a payroll company with 50 employees. And mind you, no payroll companies are set up for like $100, $200, $300 gigs here and there, because it costs
one time gig.
Yeah, it costs you like $50 to add an employee, to the payroll company. Not only that, you can't do it as an individual. You have to set up an LLC or an S corp. You have to create a corporation. On and on and on and on and on. Long story short, this law does not work for the music industry. But the challenging thing is like, no one heard about this in the music industry. No one really was looking at this or thinking about it that I knew. No independent musicians, where there was some the major industry forces were working behind the scenes, like the RIAA, the Recording Industry Association of America, who represents the major labels. They were fighting it, and to their credit, they were working behind the scenes on it. But the challenge was like no indie artist knew about it, so they failed. Like the RIAA, the A2IM that represents the indie labels, like all these powerful organizations with boatloads of money failed to carve out the music industry. And it took a scrappy group of indie musicians to hear about it. So I learned about this literally after the law was signed, months before it went into effect. And I'm like, this is crazy. So I wrote an article on Ari's Take about it. The article went viral. It opened everyone's eyes to it. It's like, hey, guess what? This is what's happening. You probably didn't know that you can't hire a drummer anymore. And like, people freaked out, rightfully so. And then it got me meetings with the legislators that were working on this. You know, I met with the Senate Majority Leader of California. I met with the Assemblywoman who wrote the bill. You know, and we were taking meetings just left and right to try to get this thing amended. And fortunately, we did get it amended. It took months and months and months of battling with the legislators, battling with the unions who liked this law. Unfortunately, I had to fight with the musicians union. Little did most people know there is a musicians union that virtually no one is in, but I had to fight tooth and nail with them because they want all their musicians classified as employees because they work on, you know, film scores and stuff like that. And that makes sense when you're working on a film set with a studio that's hiring you that has millions of dollars. It's like, yeah, sure, okay. But like when you're working with an indie musician who's trying to hire like a scrappy band together for a
Sure.
Tuesday night gig, like that doesn't make sense.
Sure.
So, you know, but yes, fortunately, we were able to amend that law. I literally like helped write the law. So a lot of those words in there and the sentences in that law, like we're all of us together kind of putting that language. And so, yes, we created this group, Independent Music Professionals United, which was like 10 of us scrappy indie music people that just like, you know, fought tooth and nail to get this thing amended.
That's awesome. How's it feel to write some legislation?
This whole process made me realize I don't really want anything to do with politics. It was not like a fun process.
Yeah.
But it is crazy to know that literally the words that we were writing in there were determining the law, and that's just the law of the land that people are going to have to live by. I never thought that I would have a hand in anything like that.
Sure. Well, again, thanks for the great work on that. And you know, of course, like you said, you know, that law makes sense with some people. I think it was probably well intentioned, and it makes sense for certain employers who may have been taking advantage of certain employees. But I'm glad you were able to.
Yeah, to clarify, the law was not written for musicians. The law was written
Right.
for Uber and Lyft drivers
Exactly.
and
Right.
DoorDash drivers, and like
Sure.
so we just got caught up in it. So it
Right.
was like it wasn't that like this was like, hey, the music industry is messing up here. It was like, no, we want to help out the Uber drivers and we want to help out all these other industries.
Sure.
But the way that it was written was like, oh, but the way that these words and this law is written is like it actually hurts the music industry, which none of the legislators know how the music industry works, so they had no idea
Right.
that this is what was happening. So yeah.
Right. You pointed out their blind spot to them and corrected it. So, Ari, tell us about Like Home, the new album slated for release. Can we say the release date?
Yeah, April 9th.
April 9th. Okay. So this will probably drop right around then.
Yeah. So my new album, it's so I you know I've used songwriting. We cover this a little bit as a safe space for me, and I've dipped my toes into all different kinds of music over the years. I'm in a funk band, and I just like I write all different kinds of music, but I've always turned to songwriting for my personal music as something that was an area and a place for me out of need. So I had a breakup from an 11-year relationship, and that turned my world upside down. I had established a life with this person, and I didn't really know which way was up. And I even talking to my therapist, like I realized that was all head, and like was trying to find some like visions and tools to move forward, but it like wasn't helpful in processing what was going on in my heart. And I didn't know how to I don't know any other way to process that other than songwriting. And so I basically spent a year after this breakup really processing through writing. I wrote, I think, some 40 songs during this process of just figuring out myself and where I was at. And it took me a full year of going through this songwriting process to actually come out in a stronger, healthier place. And I wasn't writing for an album. I wasn't writing because I thought I was going to put these songs out. Honestly, I was writing because I needed to, because like I didn't know how I was just like, when I wasn't writing, I was starting to get agitated and but also just confused a lot of the times. Like there's I remember I was having a conversation with somebody, and this was early on before I started the writing phase, and someone was like, "Oh, when did you speak with Andrew?" And I literally couldn't tell you if it was yesterday or 3 weeks ago. I had
Wow.
lost all concept of time. It was this, and I write about that in my song "Drifting" on the album. Just like the dysfunction of time when you're in it, and how you're in this time warp, and so I realized like these things were manifesting to me in really weird ways, and I needed to write about them. And so this album is that journey and that process. And then we recorded the album in quarantine. So I've never recorded an album that way before. I recorded this with my producer Justin Glasgow, um, who very talented, wonderful guy. He's worked with some incredible artists who I admire, like Andrew Bird um, and Carrie Brothers, who was the touring drummer of the Lone Bellow for many years, and worked with them. And I all of my previous records was the band is in the studio and we pretty much play the track down live and then we overdub some stuff. We weren't in the same room with anybody ever.
Mhm.
This is like the whole record was made in quarantine. So through the wonders of modern technology, um, we were able to create this thing. And I'm so proud of this, and I'm so happy that I can finally release this. And this is truly a release for me in more sense of the word than one. And I'm honored that I was able to take these songs and create this snapshot of this moment of my life, but also help other people hopefully reveal some truths about what home can mean. I personally realized when I had to rebuild my home and kind of think about what does a home actually mean, and that's why we called it like home. um and there's just a lot of those themes that are explored throughout the record.
Recording it in that way, did it actually come out maybe tighter than other records? Because if you are, if your normal way of recording was all recording live and then doing some overdubs, sometimes it sounds like you the way you recorded it this time may have been more like a traditional pop record where you're really honing down on each instrument, recording them individually. Was there a difference in sound? Did you a noticeable difference?
Yeah, I mean, we explored a lot of other production techniques that I hadn't really explored as much in the past, and that's a lot to Justin's credit. Because we had the absence of the live energy of musicians in a room,
Mhm.
we were able to kind of fill in that sonic space with some other components that don't require the limitations of other people playing their instruments in a space. Um, I, I naturally gravitate towards more organic music.
Mhm.
My influences are mostly organic artists. With organic production, analog production. So we wanted to maintain a lot of that. The acoustic guitar is still a central component of this. The acoustic piano is still a central component of the record. Um, but and keeping it natural and but yes, I mean, it enabled us to explore musical avenues that I wouldn't have even thought to turn to if we had all the players in the room. So yeah, this is an accurate snapshot of the moment of the era that we're living through, that we're in, and how you have to be malleable with the times and um, just kind of make it work however you can.
Yeah.
But also a snapshot of my life and journey and where I was at that time as well.
40, you said you recorded almost, was it 40 songs?
I wrote 40.
Wrote 40
We
songs.
didn't record all of them.
I was going to say about how many, so about how many made it on the record?
Six of them did. And that was primarily because I wanted to create a narrative and a storyline, and we place them in the order, and I would encourage people to listen to it in the order of the album, listen to the album. And yes, please, we can work the Spotify algorithm and you can pop them on playlists and whatever. And sure, that's awesome. But like, I created an album, you know?
Well, thanks so much for sharing a little bit about what to expect with your album, Ari. We will be looking forward to that. Thanks so much. I know you're a busy guy. I know you got multiple meetings today, but we like to end our interviews by asking you if you had one piece of advice to offer aspiring artists, and you've given us about 1 million today.
Sure.
But if you have, do you have kind of like a go-to golden rule just for aspiring artists? I mean, not even the music business. It could be related, but anything to offer aspiring artists.
Yeah, I think the main thing, and I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but just to hit it home, the most important thing that I think any artist can do, honestly, at any stage of their career, whether they're just getting started or they're 20 years into it, is set goals, set concrete goals. So we talked a lot about that, but in a way that they're specific and they're time bound. So it's something where in 6 months, kind of how I mentioned earlier, so it's like my goal was I wanted to open for Ben Folds. I wanted to get my song on One Tree Hill. You know, those were goals that those were more short-term goals that I kind of set for myself, but I still reverse engineer to achieve them. But what I encourage everybody to do is say, okay, let's make a list of 5 goals I want to achieve in 6 months. Now the goals I want to achieve in 1 year and in 5 years. Once you can lay those out, and I encourage everybody, write them down, actually put them on a piece of paper and put them up in your studio, in your office somewhere, like put them up in the physical space. Don't just put them on a dock in your computer or on Google Drive or something like that and it gets lost in the files. Like make it real, actually realize this vision on a physical sheet of paper that goes up that you can look at. So, keep you on track. 6 months, this is where I'd like to be, but not just with your overall career trajectory where I'd like to be, but like very, very, very specific. I want 1 million streams in 6 months. Okay, how am I going to get that? I want to get a song placed on a TV show in 6 months. Great. How do I do that? Which TV show? Who do I contact? I want to go on tour. I want to sell out this venue in 6 months, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They should be extremely specific, attainable. Time bound is so important. And I would encourage everybody every 6 months to reassess these goals. Okay, am I still on the same trajectory? Do I still want to work towards these 1 year goals? Do they make sense right now? And every 6 months you reassess, because your career will shift. Your priorities will change. You may not be in the same place that you were when you initially set these goals out, and that's okay. You have to be open to evolving a bit. So that's the number one thing I would encourage everyone to do from the get-go.
Yeah, it's such great advice. I mean, I think writing it down, like you said, making it physical, making it tangible it keeps you accountable to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I've even heard, maybe tell some people about your goals. Some people, I think, don't like to write down their goals because then they might say I might let myself down. So I'll keep it vague, and that way I won't let myself down. Or I don't want to tell this person that this is my plan, because if I don't achieve this goal, then they'll perceive me as a failure. But I've heard the opposite. You should, tell some people your goals or write them down, and as long as you can, you can take those challenges along the way, and even if you don't meet them, at least you tried your best and you had them front and center.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely push back on the don't write your goals down, or don't tell people, or don't set your goals, because honestly, like we talked about before, there are 100 different ways to create a music career in the new music business. And it, yes, can be daunting, but if you don't know where you're aiming, what kind of career you're building, if you actually don't know that, then you're going to try a lot of different things and you're going to fail at a lot of different things because you won't have the follow through, because you don't know what you're aiming for. So if you for instance are like, oh, let me give Twitch a try. I've been hearing about Twitch. I should live stream on Twitch. So I was like, all right, go on Twitch. Wow, 7 people tuned in. This sucks. This doesn't work. I'm a failure. Okay, that's what 99% of artists do. oh, I should go on TikTok. I've heard TikTok's the way to go. That's the key right now. I go on TikTok. I post on TikTok. I get 12 views. Wow, this isn't going to work. Nothing really works the first time you try it. But if your goal was in 6 months, I want to get a million likes on TikTok, or I want to get 50,000 followers on TikTok. If that was if this was a goal that you set, then you would actually kick your ass to work towards it. You would actually, you wouldn't give up after your first try. That's the thing, is just like, nothing worth having comes easy. So if you don't say, this is what I want, then you don't know how to get it, because you don't know what you want. So you actually have to say, this is what I want. This is what I want. These are my goals. And then you reverse engineer. Then you figure out, how am I going to achieve that? No one is successful the first TikTok they post, or the first Twitch they go on, or the first email they send to a music supervisor, or the first email they send to a music promoter. But if you're like, but I want to achieve this goal, maybe there's 50 steps to take to achieve that goal. And maybe you have to put in all this work in the back end and the research, but you won't do that if you don't actually set that goal. But if you set this goal, I'm like, I am going to achieve this, I'm not going to give up after step 1, then you may have the tenacity and drive to get to that step 50, which will end up enabling you to achieve that goal.
Sure. Yeah. Just your subconscious, as soon as you set that goal, your subconscious starts finding all these resources looking besides your consciousness, your subconscious starts picking up all these things and gathering resources and working towards that goal as well. Bring me back.